Hello and welcome to my presentation today. I will show you our solution docq to do simulation-driven diagnosis and therapy planning. Thank you for the opportunity to show what CADFEM Medical is doing, and I hope you enjoy my presentation. For the agenda, I'll give a really quick overview about the CADFEM Medical GmbH and what we are doing. Showing some of our products, what we are doing in research and scientific areas, and also what we are doing as a service. So CADFEM Medical is a part of the CADFEM group. So we are a corporate startup of the CADFEM International, and our vision is really to enhance the well-being of patients with simulations. So we want to identify diseases, and we want to enhance the therapy and increase the product safety of medical devices. And our mission is really to transfer these already established technologies from aerospace, automotive, and nuclear plants, etc., to simulate devices to make them safer and transfer it to the medical device industry and medicine. So we want to empower those manufacturers and those medical device manufacturers to use the simulation within their products and within their product life cycles, and give them an easy access to these in silico and so-called in silico medicine for doctors and their patients. We, CADFEM Medical, are a certified company, so we are ISO 13485 certified, and we can develop software as a medical device. So really corresponding to European medical device regulations to use it really in a clinical environment. Our fields of activities are basically divided in three columns. So first of all, there's the product development, so where we develop our platform docq to use simulation in diagnosis and treatment planning based on numerical simulation. Second, there's the service part, so we're doing patient-specific simulation, virtual benchtop testings, and consulting services how to use simulation within the approval process of medical devices, so to make them faster available into a market and use those simulation technologies to approve your device and get approval for it. Third part is the science part, and we have a lot of research projects in which we are involved in, and it's really important to collaborate with academia and science to really test and verify your simulations and your ideas to see really if these ideas are applicable and usable in and have a benefit within the industry and also in academia. And for that, we're having the CADFEM Medical Conference also to show and talk about these in silico methods. It is online and it will take place on 2nd of December in 2021. So for the products is next. Our fields of activities are really broad. So in blue, you can see products we are developing. So from the design verification, digital design verification of custom implants, to the virtual fitting of prosthesis, a product to diagnose and treat sleep apnea, and computational design and really surgical planning for maxilla distractions are products we are developing. On top of this, we have services like the virtual test lab to really do in a service do worst case assessments for ASTM and benchtop tests in medical devices, and also in silico trials or in silico clinical trials to test your products within virtual patients. And also research projects like a product to perform a risk assessment for aortic aneurysms combined with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also surgical planning tool for complex hip fractures. And all these ideas and all these applications are based on our core technology, so docq. And docq is a platform really enabling doctors and medical staff to use ANSYS simulation technologies within predefined workflows. So we really want to make these already established and cutting edge ANSYS technologies, solvers, and other technologies available for doctors. We don't want to reinvent those technologies that are already there and proved. And so we developed a technology and a platform to bridge that gap between these engineering general purpose software to medical devices and medical usage. So, and we developed docq for this. And docq is really a scalable, flexible, and customer defined product. And the core of this product is the green cube you can see here. So docq Core is our platform. So we are transferring or develop technologies to visualize, to make simulations easy to use, automated, and accessible through cloud infrastructures, mostly based on Microsoft Azure, and which are verified infrastructures. So it's really easy to get a doctor to docq, setting up simulations, and through docq Core make them repeatable and always with the same quality. And on top of these platform docq Cores, we develop so-called docq modules. So the products you saw that are in the previous slide are products. And we combine these modules with a really specific medical question that is answered into autonomous products, and we combine them together. And so we get a really scalable infrastructure, and it really enables us to have unrestricted usage of simulation within the clinical environment. To make it easier understandable, I show you now some examples of our products. So first of all, here you can see docq PBSS. It is a virtual fitting tool for prosthetic sockets. So normally transfemoral amputees are getting really fitted and customized sockets, and so-called sockets for their residual limb. And it is a lot of work to really find the right fitting. So they manufacture normally 4 to 6 or 7 so-called test sockets, so really sockets to test the fit until they find the right one. So with our simulation tool, we want to reduce that. So we want to bring objectivity and really objective criteria to assess the fitting of a patient's sockets in absence of the patient. So we use scans for it and material data we assessed in the last years to really see how the socket is fitting onto the patient's residual limb. And we're doing that exclusively with the Polig GmbH. It's a daughter company of Otto Bock, the biggest manufacturer of prostheses and orthotics in the world. So next you can see docq OSA. docq OSA supports the diagnosis of sleep apnea or obstructive sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a really a cause or a sickness which is very prevalent. So a lot of patients are suffering from it. So 5 to 10% of the world of the people in the world are suffering from sleep apnea. So it's a collapsing of the upper airway during sleep, and so a lack of oxygen within the brain during sleep. And it has a lot of consequences for the patient on through the day. So they are sleepy and they're having a lot of fatigue and they're not very having a bad sleep. So for this reason, we try to develop a product which is using state-of-the-art computational fluid dynamics and fluid structure interaction technologies to really help with the diagnosis and therapy of sleep apnea. So with our tool, we can visualize and characterize the upper airway of a patient and really determine the cause of the respiratory problems, so and the mechanical causes. For that, we are doing a lot of research and with the Klinikum Dortmund, and on the left lower side, you can see a lot of papers we published within with Klinikum Dortmund and for this project, and we are aiming for a CE mark, so really making a product out of it in the future to really treat and help the treatment of patients with obstructive sleep apnea. Next is docq G&E. It's a surgical planning tool for forced maxilla expansion. So we are really proud of this product because it is a tool which is already used to plan surgeries with simulation, with ANSYS technologies, and it's really used for patients. And with the tool, we can optimize the cutting pattern of an so-called forced maxillary distraction, so really a widening of the upper jaw. And with our software tool, we can ensure a symmetric and aesthetic surgical outcome for each patient, and we can reduce the trauma with shorter cuts and remaining blood vessels for the patient. So it is much less severe for the patient than the usual treatment options. And we are doing it exclusively for Kalis Martin, and we have a patent. So we having the patent for this procedure, and we want to expand in this area. To get a more or a better idea of docq, the surgical planning tool, I'll show you some slides now. So the challenge of SARME, so the surgically assisted rapid maxillary expansion procedure, is to get an asymmetric outcome. So mostly, or there's a lot of asymmetric outcomes because, as you can see here, the maxilla is getting cut out on with a so-called Lefort 1 osteotomy. So they cut out the whole maxilla, and we have a severe bone trauma. And the problem is also to really get it into the right in the right position. And there are a lot of problems with innervation and blood perfusion of the teeth because all remaining blood vessels are cut. And there's still no certainty for the right occlusion, so that the teeth are aligning right and the symmetry of the face is given afterwards. So and the problem is really easy, or easy to understand, because if you're having an asymmetric anatomy of your skull and you're applying a symmetric force with these so-called distractors, so it's a really small device which is kind of working like a screw, and you push the part of the jaw apart, and if you're having then a symmetric force applied on the asymmetric anatomy of your skull, you will mobilize your skull asymmetric. So one side moves more than the left. So for example, left moves further than the right side. And so you get a real asymmetric opening, which is not really pleasant for the patient. And that happens in almost 30% of the cases. So more than 30% of the cases, we have an asymmetric opening of 3 to 5 or more millimeters. And that is really a lot in the upper jaw and within your teeth. So then you have to do a lot of resurgery or a lot of treatments with braces, etc., to really correct this procedure. And with our solution, we are calculating how long the cuts have to be that we have a symmetrical opening. So we take the patient-specific asymmetric anatomy, and we are still applying the same force, so really an symmetric force, but we individualize the mobilization of each skull side, so the right or maxilla side, right and left. So we define with our simulation tool and calculate how long the cuts have to be that we have a symmetrical opening of the jaw. And with this solution, our partner is really able, so Kalis Martin is able to enhance their hardware products by adding a digital planning for each patient, so really personalizing this hardware product, which is out of the box, and also getting a promise to the patient that the symmetrical outcome of the surgery is symmetric and as planned. And on top of our digital planning, Kalis Martin is manufacturing surgical guides. So these surgical guides are applied on the teeth of the patients that they can really do the cuts in the surgery as planned. So they're having a lot of added value. So digital planning, which is paid by the reimbursement system in Germany, and hardware product, and surgical guide. So a lot of more or added value within using simulation in their product processes. Another great example is docq. docq is a tool to virtually test implants, and it's the first easy-to-use software for digital verification of patient-specific implants. So we see a big trend in personalization of medical devices, and it's really not, there's no way to test them for each patient. And we developed docq to set up highly complex biomechanical simulation within minutes, and to ensure the safety and efficacy of the patient-specific devices in each patient. And we integrate this workflow of docq into the process of design of these patient-specific implants, and really produce a report where the performance and safety can be really tested and documented within the process of these medical device manufacturers. So the usual process for custom implants is really that they are collecting patient data, then they're doing a surgical planning together with doctor for each patient, and then a custom or a designer is designing the custom implant for each patient with normal CAD tools like freeform, etc., etc. And then they are going directly to implant manufacturing, so printing or milling, then post-processing of the implants, and to surgery. This usually takes place within 4 to 5 days from getting the patient data to surgery, and there also has to be a lot of quality management already in this implant manufacturing and post-processing. So a lot of technical documentation like recording of CAD/CAM data and validation of processes, etc. But really in this surgical planning and implant design, where you define how it looks for your patient, and where really the safety and efficacy of an implant is defined, there's a total lack of verification and validation and quality management. So there comes docq in. It's really a tool to verify each patient-specific design and produce a report for the quality management system of the medical device manufacturer. And we are at the moment have implemented 4 modules, so the maxilla, the mandible, the thorax, and the lower arms, so radius, etc. And we are aiming to include more anatomical regions and implant types to test. And to give you a better idea of how the software works, I'll show you a little video of the application for the lower. So first of all, you can open docq as a desktop client. It's a standalone software where you can import your planning data from the design. So you're importing the patient-specific bone geometry, the transplant, the implants, choose a material from the material library, and import the screws. And as a next step, you have to orient your patient-specific geometry and register it to a reference. For that reason, we set landmarks in a very easy workflow. So just to tell the geometry and give it more information, and to know where is which part of the geometry. Then you register it to the reference, and in the next step we can apply physiological load cases from the reference to the patient-specific geometry. Here you can see the forces acting, so it's really the muscle forces of the physiological load cases, and applied on the jaw. Next step, you can send the simulations really easy to a cloud server infrastructure, where the simulation and the heavy calculations are done. Next, you can open the project again, check if the results are there. If they are there, you can retrieve the results onto your computer. The project file is always the key to get these data. And After you're retrieving these results, you can open these within the docq environment. And it's really an easy to use application for a designer, which is more or less an finite element lay user. And he can assess really the strength and the maximum forces, etc., on the patient. And also he can show the screw forces. So it's really easy to interpret how much force is put into one screw, and you can do A/B design and see which design is better for a patient. And also we have implemented a material limit, so he knows how much, so really within safety factor, how much is allowed for each patient. And on top of that, to really file it within the quality management system, as you see, we developed an FDA compliant report with verification and validation stated, and also for each patient produced these result reports and the simulation reports, which can be filed within the quality management system to really use it for liability verification and validation afterwards. And to really back up those nice ideas and these products, we are doing a lot of research. I'll show you some projects we did in the last time to get a better understanding of what we're doing here. First of all, a research project for docq, so really method development and model verification in V&V for our tool. So we validated in benchtop of the mandibular. Together with Fachhochschule Nordschweiz. And we did DIC measurements with an RMS system, and we 3D printed mandibles, so with an SLA system. And we did 3 intact mandible measurements with the DIC system and 8 within fracture and osteocentesis to really train and calibrate and validate our models. So with displacement, hysteric forces, and strain. And we loaded the jaws each time with 1,500 newtons uniaxial, and we get really good regressions and really good results in comparing deformation of simulation and deformation of the experiment, and also strains and stresses. Another project we are very proud of is docq, numerical surgical planning. It's a project to really assess the mechanical behavior of a complex fracture within the hip. As an input, the doctor just needs measurements on CT or X-rays, and we are morphing and fitting a model with statistical shape models. Then the doctor can really define the defect within the software, then do a vertical surgical planning with osteocentesis plates and screws, so how he would like to treat the patient with the complex fracture, and then do simulation and assess if the post-surgical state, so if it's solid or not. And we are in this research project with the CESPO and the HTWK in Leipzig, Germany, and we developed a prototype to do that. And we are really doing cutting-edge determination of soft tissue material parameters together with them, and we are training and calibrating our model and do V&V for our patient-specific models with 5 ex vivo specimens. So and on top of that, 2 porcupine specimens, and with so-called ROM measurements, so range of motion measurements, which you can see here on the left, and also a lot of soft tissue tensile testing for the tendons and the muscle, and also compression tests for cortical bones and cortical tensile strength with 3-point bending tests, and also with RMS systems and DIC measurements, so on a very high level. And we are now in the phase of acquisitioning a new partner for further product development, that we can do surgical planning or make surgical planning for these complex fractures available for doctors. Next case and research project, which we are very proud of, is also docq AAA, so an abdominal aortic aneurysm. In this project, we are combining machine learning and artificial intelligence with simulation and to perform a risk assessment if an aortic aneurysm is rupturing or not. So the rupture risk is assessed. And for that reason, we implement a machine learning database for the assessment of material parameters according to non-invasive data, so like blood pressure and from data from a blood screening for each patient, and assess really failure criteria from these non-invasive clinical data and learnings from the past. So, in combining these data-driven modeling with physics-based modeling to get a better idea if the patient needs to be treated or not. And we published a +1 paper with Professor G, and we implemented also his methods in and further development developed those within our software systems. And that's a really nice project to see how we could combine these two technologies. And to sum up and to show how we could use these know-hows and these technologies within services. So to really do product approval and to use it within the development of medical devices, I'll show you our service department and some examples of it. Within the service, we do, for example, patient-specific simulations, as I said, so really biomechanical simulations and show effects of medical interventions and how medical devices perform within a patient, and really support clinically relevant questions with simulations and also the interaction of the devices within the body. And also for product development, and it is very essential to see how medical devices perform within benchtop tests, and also to assess the worst cases which have to be physically tested afterwards in a neutral test lab. For example, on the left side, you can see a study we did together with Medartis. We supported their post-market surveillance. So through the new medical device regulations, which are applied in Europe, we have to do an increased requirements, or the increased requirements for the follow-up of the medical devices within the life cycle of the product. So when they are really in the patients, and to really prove the benefit and the performance and the safety within patients, simulation can be used just awesome for that reason. So we are really getting objective data and can support the clinical results with these data, with these simulation data. So we can assess and say why the clinical data or support clinical data, and it show why clinical data are the way they are. And this was very successful with Medartis and our tools. And another nice example we did for a Swiss dental solution. So we reduced the physical testing for them. So they had a product, and very easy. So it's a dental implant to place on the new teeth on that, and they had to reply on an FDA request from the U.S. Federal Drug Administration. So they had to show that their product is safe. They said, the FDA said that they don't think that they tested the worst case, so they have to redo all the tests, and that would potentially result in 80 benchtop tests in a neutral test lab, and each test takes 3 weeks, and they could do only 7 in parallel. So that's almost impossible to do that within 120 days request time from the FDA. So they came to us and said, so we need simulation to prove that, and to prove a rationale that already tested devices are the worst cases. And we were able to do that. And then they had to do a lot less benchtop tests afterwards and got the product approved and could answer the request in time and could move on with their product release within the US. Also, part of our service is a workshop and a seminar to show how simulation can be used in the approval process of medical devices. And in the seminar, we show how these simulation technologies can be used and which guidelines and initiatives and standards are already in place and how to use it to make to support the medical device approval process. And next online seminar is on 10th of November in 2021. So if you're interested, you can register through the page listed here and the QR code. Thank you very much for your attention. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope we see you next time. Many thanks. Bye-bye.